So I just wanted to recap a little bit about prioritization, which we talked about last week, and I do believe I included some cases in this. So what I want to do today is kind of take the chance to allow us in the room together to work through a prioritization situation. We've frequently talked about this idea of prioritization, and on the other side of the coin, we sometimes use the word risk. But this documentation that we've put out is really our first stab at actually articulating that to you guys and how we are doing some of these, how we are doing prioritization ourselves. So I wanted to give everyone the chance to work with the people at their table to think about prioritization. And I'm going to pull up on the screen our prioritization document. So I want to kind of just give us a chance to think about macro, meso, and micro level prioritization. Actually, for this activity, we're mostly going to be focusing on macro and meso. Yeah, I'll pull up the guidance, and if you guys just want to introduce yourselves to the people at your table, if you have a large table, you can maybe split into two. Yeah, it should just be on web access. There it is. Yeah, can you scroll down to the matrix? People can pull it up on their machines too. Okay, so have you guys introduced yourselves to everyone at your table now? Okay, I can hear some more introductions going on, so I'll let it be. So this website, this webpage that I have open is our prioritization guidance. And this is open on our web access site. So if you just go to web access and then it's under help and resources, I believe. This is the document that we talked through a little bit last week, thinking about how to think about which areas of web accessibility to focus on. So I'm going to take us back to our case in a second here, and I want you guys to kind of pull up this guidance on your machines and walk through the different levels of macro prioritization. How would you fill out this matrix? How would you answer these questions with these numbers? So do you mind going back to the our activity? Yeah. So, all right, we apparently are creating a new college for disability studies, and they're deciding on a new learning management system to use and deploy. And you are the new liaison for this MAU. This might sound like a familiar process since you guys are all liaisons for your MAUs. And there are 5,000 students in this college and 500 students in classes that utilize that LMS. I want you to kind of walk through the macro prioritization and just kind of think about some of the different steps that you would take in order to think about whether this is a priority item, whether this is something that you would focus on if you were the liaison for the College of Disability Studies. So does our short case here make sense? Kelly's shaking her head no. Yeah, it is early. So the goal of this is to just kind of run through the macro prioritization for starters, which is our table that we have up on the website. So if you go to web access and go to help and resources, you'll see our prioritization guidance. And I would like to just get us thinking about this and give us a chance to use it. So I'll mosey around the room and help people out as we're working on this. Go ahead and speak amongst yourselves. All right, how did it go, y'all? Confused? Okay. There are a lot of unknowns.
You did this just so we'd read the page, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, this is fine. Yeah, the goal of this activity was to get you guys to kind of just see the different prioritization. or the table within the macro prioritization levels, and also to get us thinking about what are these unknowns. So Annette, what were some of the unknowns that your group discussed?
If it had even been evaluated prior to being purchased, if there was alternatives.
Yeah, so if it had been evaluated prior to purchase or if there were alternatives. These are all bits of information that our team and you guys as liaisons will sometimes have to gather. And I understand that there are some unknowns because my case is a little bit light on the info side. But yeah, these are things that will help us think about prioritization and apply the macro guidance. Were there any other unknowns that you guys identified? Jerry?
Learning management system is kind of a broad concept. Are they just using it to schedule, to register for the course? Are they using it to get content for the course, instructor posts their notes there? Is this being used for collaboration? So digital content like video in there? We don't know how broadly this is being used. And then the idea that there's 500 students in class that use it, well, there's potentially 5,000 students who might be looking at the LMS to see if they want to take it. And so what exactly the LMS, what constitutes it, what it's used for is big questions there.
And is that being used for online courses or face-to-face courses, which in the past we've heard face-to-face is RCPD will help you, online, no help.
Right. So the two items that were brought up is what type of LMS is this? How is this LMS being used? Is this something that people are using to get into classes? Is the College of Disability Studies eventually planning to broaden this to 5,000 students? And then Chris added that, is this are these online programs or are these face-to-face? And these are all different things that we would think about when we're trying to decide whether this is something we can engage with or how to engage with it. Just a little bit of context from our end of the beyond our end of the fence. This is sometimes about the level of information that we get when we have to do an accessibility evaluation, or I like to sometimes call them an investigation, because there's a lot of info gathering and pieces like that. But yeah, I just really wanted to get you guys to take a chance to look at the macro prioritization. Graham?
So priority levels 3 and 4 for number of users both include a relatively large number of students.
Uh-huh.
How are those differentiated?
I'd have to look at the chart. Do you mind pulling it up?
The chart seems to leave both of them as options, depending on how you read it there.
Number of users on it?
Yeah, for priority levels 3 and 4 for number of users, if you want to blow that up.
Yeah, so 4 adds in, including a large number of students and faculty or external guest visitors. It kind of actually leaves out staff a little bit in that way, because a lot of the operations that some of us do as staff members it's fairly easy to accommodate for, because that person can just be doing different tasks. If it's a faculty member who needs an accommodation, then that might prevent them from doing scholarly work, which helps the university, continue on its mission.
I'm just guessing that it's an or for the external thing, so other than that, it's almost the same as 3. It's just a relatively large number of students. It technically seems to hit both of them. So is there differentiation at that point, or should this be clarified a little bit?
I think it should probably be clarified a little bit based on the fact that, it's a usability thing.
Be an and or an inclusive or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way you read or. at this
Right.
point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, Jojo, do you have a piece of paper or something? Yeah, so I'll look at that one and see if we can't make that more clear. And then as we're doing, moving beyond the macro level, if we scroll to the meso, that's,
Can I ask one question first?
yeah.
So when we looked at the number, 500 seemed like a lot, but it's only 10%, which seemed like not so much.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about relatively large numbers, what's large?
We purposefully didn't define that because it really is a relative measure that has to be done within the MAU, because you guys are liaisons, and if you are a liaison for a college which serves, like 5,000 students, then relatively large might be a certain percentage of that, but we didn't necessarily specify that because we didn't want to get that to that level of granularity where like someone that's looking at this from a legal perspective might be like, hey, why are you using these percentages? Because that kind of is counter to the arguments that we make for accessibility in the first place. Like 1 in 5 individuals has a disability, and we don't want to usurp that or lessen that.
I got one thing there, Phil. In our situation, we're dealing with like the public a lot. I mean, ours is only applicable to 2 and 4 because we're constantly dealing with like external.
So do you think it would be helpful if we had like a separate prioritization for academic versus non-academic?
That's what I was thinking about. I'm wondering though. I don't want to like, muck it up and just.
Hey, I mean, this is supposed to be a tool for you guys. So if you think that that would be helpful, any other non-academic side folks think that that would be helpful?
I've been able to kind of make the transition between our systems and what you're going for here. I'm going to just throw out coursework, but we do have training and videos and stuff that kind of falls in there, so
Right.
I found it acceptable, but I wouldn't be opposed to separating it out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's really good feedback. Ian, and then Graham.
And maybe instead of separating the types of users, just use users as the baseline. Whether it's faculty, students, or visitors and guests, just kind of lump them all together because that is the singular focus, isn't it? Making sure everyone can use it.
Right. Yeah, that's our primary focus. So Ian was talking about trying to lump together the different, am I articulating this correctly? Lumping together or not lumping together?
Lumping together all the different types of users, so we aren't separating faculty from students from visitors. They're all just users.
Yeah. So that's kind of difficult in some instances because we want to think about what is core to like the university's mission, and that's really like, the spreading of scholarship through teaching, research, and service. But yeah, I see what you're saying, because it can be confusing, especially this first one. I agree with that. Chris? Sorry.
Financial considerations for especially individual departments factor into this prioritization, because of course I don't think many people would fully disagree with prioritizing this, but a constraint seems to be oftentimes, and this is where you get the face-to-face versus online support, is financial, honestly, and
Yeah.
being able to achieve these things, even though people would agree that we should prioritize and want to go in the appropriate direction with that, there seem to be real tangible limits there.
Yeah, so Chris's question is how do financial constraints factor into this? And this was kind of something that we haven't necessarily been able to define just based on how we're positioned within the university. And I would say that it was also kind of a chicken or the egg thing. We really wanted to get our prioritization thoughts out so that people could start to make informed decisions. And so you as liaisons can work with your MAU leads or your liaison community to figure out how you want to, like what kind of resource you can dedicate to accessibility within reason. So I hope that this will actually kind of help us get to that a little bit more, or at least help you get to that within your MAUs, because that's something that the university has been pretty hands-off on, is saying a specific amount of resource that should be dedicated to web accessibility or course accessibility. Is that a good answer, you think? Graham?
Also kind of to respond to that first is that by prioritizing first and independently, it provides better justification for resources to be spent. And then if one college has a whole bunch of things at a high priority level that aren't getting fixed and others are getting fixed in other colleges, that creates a better point to have those discussions of, why aren't we allocating those resources? I think helps. Then my question was the relatively large number of proportion of students, while undefined, that being treated, so you probably mentioned it as kind of relative to that actual college,
Yes.
as opposed to the entire possible audience of tens of thousands or things. So is that supposed to be considered as an internal proportion or to the overall? Because deal with sites that have hundreds of thousands of potential users across the state versus, 500 out of 5,000, not even 500 out of the 50,000 students. Which way should we be looking at that?
Yeah, so Graham is asking, since we're using these relative measures, which area we should be applying these relative measures to? Should we be applying it at the MAU level or the general audience level for the university? I think that what we're getting at with this is considering it at the MAU level, because you guys are all liaisons and are expected to make progress towards 5-year plans and with your 1-year reviews. So we want to give you a tool to kind of figure out what are like high priority things you should focus on, what are things you should kind of push to the side a little bit, or at least put on the shelf for later. For the type of thinking that we do on our team, and maybe that you do actually for UARC, you might consider the whole audienceship of the university at large, because that's how we can figure out how we support things. And that's been our strategy previously. Like when we see something, it's like a job application system or something for the university, we get engaged in that and we spend a lot of time on it. And then Jerry spends a lot more time on it and makes it amazing.
It would be helpful to provide some guidance on that. That way, MAUs are comparing similar kinds of things. Because one MAU, they're all at different sizes, but you don't want one MAU grading it based on their MAU and another one basing it on the entire university, and they're going to get completely different prioritizations internally.
Yeah. Okay, I agree.
Yeah.
And Chris?
To Graham's point, in your experience so far, what has there been movement in MAU prioritization financially for this yet? Or are we hoping that we'll kind of, over time, climb that ladder a little bit?
So you're asking if we have been able to use this tool to help MAUs understand how to think about financing or budgeting for?
Has it increased in level of priority within MAUs? Like, so has this become financially more of a?
Oh, the accessibility movement at large?
I mean like this type of thing.
I'm sorry.
Like facilitating accessibility, mediation of
Risk.
content and things like that for
Okay.
colleges and departments.
Yeah, so we've been seeing a lot more people approaching accessibility in different ways. I mean, we get more people every day that are within different MAUs and wanting to learn new ways to do this. So I think that what this will help us do is to give people a framework for how to approach us too, because this is the kind of thinking that, as I mentioned, this was our internal framework before we put it out as a process document, and so hopefully this will allow people to figure out how to better engage with us and to use this on websites or educational programming. For courses specifically, we definitely still recommend using prioritization to come up with like the list of courses that you might want to check out. This is something that we've done even before we had these rules, or this process, I should say. And I think that once you do that, then you can move into using the cab car review process that Madison talked about a couple of meetings ago. I guess that was 3 or 4 months ago.
Maybe I can put it a different way. Has this caused MAUs or departments to increase their budgets?
I think it's too new at this point.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
So we haven't seen this impact budgeting of
Yeah.
departments or MAUs yet.
I've got any
to
deans, for
support
example,
the
that seen that,
prioritization.
so,
Yeah.
they wouldn't have had.
I mean, it's not a new movement, it's just a new framework. And so you're hoping this framework will encourage departments or MAUs to prioritize financially more resources to accomplishing these goals.
Yeah, or more reasonably resourced things as well, because we don't want to be necessarily spending every a couple $1,000s on something that's going to be used by 2 people. So yeah, we haven't seen that yet. I'm hoping that through the 1-year review process, which I know a lot of y'all have been asking questions about that, now that Jim's on board, we can kind of get more into that process to give you guys feedback on the 1-year reviews. We've been trying to get to that for ages. But we're hoping that through that process, we can use this to communicate with liaisons and leadership.
Question for you, help me walk my mind through this, Phil, because if you're saying basically you want me to look at the MAU, in my situation, I'm gonna look at what, 700,000 alumni and friends.
Yeah.
And that means, you know, as far as engagement, you know, unlike a class that might have 80% of those people are gonna engage with that LMS. You know, as far as our online experiences now, if we go to a bowl game or something like that, it's gonna hang out around 10-20%.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of always, and I don't know who they are, which kind of puts me in the impact level being kind of always small.
Indeterminate.
Now that you tell me to say, well, Randy, just kind of look at like the higher number of like all the people that engage online
Mm-hmm.
in your MAU instead of looking at the 700,000 like alumni friends.
Yeah. So I guess for your situation, I would consider that to be your audienceship. That's, you know, one of the reasons why we considered guests and visitors, and that's some of the language that we've seen used in like some of the different documents, like legal wise. But yeah, for your specific case, I would consider like what is the impact of this program or service that you're putting out to that amount of potential users. Obviously, if we're going to a bowl game or something, that's probably going to be a widely viewed thing. So that would be something that you would want to spend some time on, and go through, you know, the next stages of prioritization, like the meso, figuring out which parts are most important within that system. This has been an amazing dialogue, but I think that Nate wants me to move along.
No, this is great. I mean,
Yeah, great questions. Thanks, y'all, for all this feedback. I was really hoping to get a ton of feedback from this, so